healers. Who are these healers? These healers are our doctors, our healthcare professionals, our nurses, and the counselors who are all collectively working together for the betterment of a patient. The last year and a half has been really, really rough because of COVID 19. We all know that. And it's treated humanity not so good. And our healers have taken a huge hit. It's been tough for them. And somewhere, I think we seem to have forgotten that they are humans too. Today, through another story, we are going to highlight how human our healers are. I have the pleasure of hosting Dr. Prem here. Dr. Prem, from the entire team of Caregiver Saathi, a very, very warm welcome to you. And do introduce yourselves to us, to our listeners.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Naganath Narasimhan Prem. I'm a consultant in geriatric medicine and elder care specialist in the Department of Geriatric Medicine in Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai. And I'm also a leadership member of Graceful Living Initiative, which is with an NGO which is known as Tulsi Trust. And yes, of course, I love old people, so that's why I actually went into geriatrics. It takes a lot of patience to actually know them, and I think that is somehow, I mean, I was able to do it over these years, and I think what I have learned in my life till now is most from them, because their experience and their learnings are always an eye opener. So I really draw inspiration from that. And yes, I mean, always wanted to be a doctor, so here I am doing my job.
Thank you so much. I think that's such a beautiful introduction. Your love for the elders. And to be in geriatrics is not easy because elders need a special kind of love and attention. So thank you for what you do, Dr. Prem. I want to talk about the last year and a half. It's been very, very tough. The pandemic has changed the human equation a lot. The situation around the world has not. So, can you tell us how the last year and a half has been for you, professionally and personally?
Yeah, I think cannot ever predict something like a pandemic. I remember, I mean, I've mentioned this to many people, that I always remember the movie Contagion. And I saw that, and it was I've seen it multiple times. So it was around 1.5 hours of everything that has encapsulated our time till now. Of course, everything happens quick in it because it's a movie. This was something we lived every point. So, I mean, nobody expected, let us be very frank, let alone us, even the common man, anybody, nobody expected a pandemic to actually there. So obviously there was an element of denial that there is actually a pandemic. Like we have had cases before, maybe cases of Nipah, other cases, wherein somehow or the other we have been able to sort of keep it to maybe a city or a state, but it has never gone national, and in this case international, to a great extent. So when rumbles were happening in China in the initial part of the year, we were still, I mean, all of us in India were very much doing our original work of involved in whatever we were doing as far as us doctors or even other professionals are concerned. I think the real time it hit us is when the first lockdown was announced. And I think, as any normal person, there was a sense of panic, to be very frank. And more than anything, it was about. I like watching a lot of zombie serials. So I used to watch Walking Dead. So I could actually, I mean, I'm not saying that that was going to happen, but I haven't seen towns like that which were shown throughout the world as in the series as I could see it now in my own country, in my own city, when there was pin drop silence, and everybody was in a state of panic. There was hoarding of actually items. And yes, but once the lockdowns sort of set in, then it was about how we are going to deal with things. And then slowly and steadily, of course, we realized that there is actually a pandemic and things are shutting down. But then this is not professional yet. Professionally, what was going to come on was, I think, a tsunami of cases, a tsunami of cases of the unknown. We didn't know. I mean, it's a baby. The virus is still a baby. 18 months into knowing a disease is nothing. We have been treating heart disease, stroke, cancer for years together, and we are still learning. So learning about something so recent was not that easy. That is one thing. So obviously the initial part, I try to gather a bit of knowledge online on what's happening, what's the disease about, because yes, as a medical professional you need to be updated. But then of course comes the time of action. And there did come a time of action in which you could say it was always something known as doing it voluntarily. The reason being, it is a pandemic. You can't force anybody to do anything. So as things happened, there were training sessions online. I'm going to thank, of course, Jaslok and even Shruti Tandon ma'am, because she took the initiative in actually getting us a bit of training. I mean, I in geriatrics, I do a background of critical care as well, but dealing with the pandemic is completely different. Dealing with the unknown is even more so. So we started that, but and then suddenly there was obviously a day when I actually had to go in. I had to actually go into the setup, do COVID rounds for the first time in my life. I think that was in very, I mean, to be very frank, scary. Scary is the word. Uh, I mean, it was as minute as thinking whether I will be able to wear the PP properly, because I have no idea how to wear it. So of course there was a person who helped me, a doctor who helped me in guiding me. And I look it upon today, it's a spinal level for me. I just wear the PP. I don't even realize I have worn it already. So that's how it was. But it was about, the fear was already about the disease which is going inside. The fear was about whether the PP is good enough. We were obviously sort of given that it was good enough, and of course we trusted Jaslok and everybody because the critical rare unit was already working in, and so that was another thing which was taken care of. Another disease, another thing that you actually, when you came into with patients, is treating them. Ultimately, you are still treating patients. So there's life and death involved. It's not only that it's a pandemic. Like fine, we were always at risk, but not from such a disease that which could spread so easily, and a disease that thrives on spreading. I mean, why are the variants? The variants are because there has been so much of spread. So going on, looking at all these patients who actually were in a lot of ways isolated. There are no caregivers allowed. I mean, and then slowly and steadily doing that particular duty. It was an 8-hour duty that day, and I can sort of, I'm just, I remember. I mean, I have to go back to I'll be shuttling between personal and professional both. So I had to go back on the
Sure.
conversation which I actually had with my wife, who's also practicing, but that whether we should do it. Uh, I won't say at all, but we should do it. But I mean, it's something. If the calling comes, we'll do it. So I mean, that was the decision we sort of took it, and the calling did come. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear, especially for my wife, and I'm sure she was shit scared. I mean, that is the word. I mean, scared. The fact that you can't control things is worse. I mean, we at least can control things. We are inside. This is, of course, she was about to start COVID duty. She hadn't started. I mean, after that, it was double. I was on duty. She was on duty. We are worrying about each other. So that's the way days used to go. So I had this conversation with my parents also, because so they were very clear. They were like, see, it's, I mean, you're a doctor. We always knew that you will have to do things, and we are sort of mentally ready that you, but they were scared. I'm sure they prayed hard, which is why maybe for some reason I'm still around, because there was a lot of exposure for everybody. And why I'm saying is, you have to think you're lucky enough, because there have been a lot of deaths in doctors. I mean, we have not only treated, but at the same time we lost a lot of doctors. So it wasn't, and these are the doctors who just took it head on. These are the doctors who were in the fray, not thinking of their own life, not thinking of family. I'm sure they did, but ultimately everybody was convinced that it has to be done. So coming on to the professional again, so it was all these cubicles, and you have you obviously have single, and people who are thinking that they are fine, they have certain issues, but they are scared themselves because they have COVID. So it's not that they are not scared. And then after the rounds finished, obviously I had to take some swabs also that day, which obviously took. And then we had to we got to know that there is a way the relatives also have to be informed. So imagine a relative outside the hospital who doesn't know what's happening, not because of any fault of the hospital or them, because that's the way the disease is. Even if you're around the hospital for your safety, you are not supposed to be in the cubicle. So then telling them that how they are was also something which was very important. So it was about getting knowledge about the disease, treating the disease, but also at all points in your time being safe from the disease. Because I think that was very important, because it was not only about us treating in the hospital. It's about when you go back, you don't want.
Correct.
So I mean, the number of baths I've had is enormous. I mean, it was almost 2 to 3 a day for sustained periods. And that's the way it was. We do everything, anything possible, so that we don't sort of take anything back. I mean, nobody takes it purposely, but then you are obviously sort of worried. And so, I mean, that's what. So it changed, and the perception of life obviously changed. It's not, and a pandemic can happen. You are living the movie Contagion, is what I felt. But it also showed. I mean, even my wife told me that multiple times. It just showed. I mean, let me be very plain, that we are not cowards. We never were. We won't run away from the situation. And a lot of doctors did the same. I wouldn't say doctors. I would say police officials. I would say, I mean, even the airlines, which actually got patients back. I mean, everybody just took it in. I'm sure they didn't think that, oh my God, COVID disease, whether we'll get it, not get it. They had the fear, but they did their job. So everybody, so the plunge had to be taken, and once the plunge was taken, it did get me a pushing, and it did. I just had one phone call before that, and that phone call was to Dr. Shruti. So she just told me that, see, ultimately, you just need to be safe. Trust, trust you being safe, and I think the rest should be fine. And I think I hold that to this particular day. Whenever we actually deal with any kind of suspects as well, that is what it is. So being safe yourself is important, but at the same time, you take the plunge anyways, because that's the way you are. I mean, I ask myself, I don't think I can sit at home. And that was the same thing with my wife also. We can't just sit at home and think that we're not doing anything about it. So I mean, that was why we obviously took the plunge. And so once that started, then of course it was a continuous process. But but another thing which we forget is we still had homes.
Yeah, I was just going to interject you,
Yeah,
and I was just going to come there.
there
That
was
you,
no cooking,
yeah. I
there
mean,
was no
the
maid, there
correct,
was nobody. So it was
correct.
it was a multi-purpose kind of thing. You go back, you do that also, you try to cook also. There was no deliveries in the initial part, so that was not taken care of. So everything, so it was from everything involving that, doing that, coming back. Then at some point both of us were on duty, so we were just dead tired, but still we had to sort of get that thing to feed us. Of course, I lost a lot of weight, and my wife did too, because we obviously didn't have, let me be very frank, didn't have time to think. And it was just about going, coming back, and trying to spend whatever time we got, because it was after some time it became worrying about each other to a great extent. It was
True.
not only worrying about self. And then, yes, the external world. I mean, I didn't meet my parents for 12 months. They are in Bombay, but I didn't meet them. The reason, because I was like, I have exposure. My wife is also going, so we made a decision. We won't meet them at all. We didn't meet them until almost 15 months into the pandemic. I mean, that
And
is
I
just
and
about
I
this
have
year.
all goose flesh listening to you,
Yeah.
Dr. Prem, because it must have been, for the viewers. Now, I want to highlight a few things. he's been there, his wife has been there taking care of everyone who's been admitted, who had been admitted with COVID. While taking care of themselves, they had their homes, they had their parents, just like all of us. So let's realize that it's not been easy for them. And like he just said, that they're all they did not give up. They were there, and thanks to him and the likes of him and his wife, with so many lives were saved. I also want to talk about the fear. I was admitted with COVID in January, and when I was admitted, I saw doctors like you in those PPEs, and going through duties of 6 to 7 to 8 hours in a day, and I thought you all looked like aliens who could probably not even move properly. And along with that, so many touch points, people coughing. I remember one of them told me wear a mask because the fear was so high, and I actually said I can't wear a mask because I was freezing so much. So, can you just tell us about the fear and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was, see, ultimately, once you are done with, once you're putting the PP, it's all about, it's like suiting up. And once you suit up, you're in the job. So it's only about taking care of the patient. And I think every doctor thinks that way only. It's about the patient matters. So the fear for us goes, you want to allay fear. So with our knowledge, with the way we want to treat patients, we want to allay fear. At the same time, we also allay fear of the relatives because we call them up and tell them how they are. I mean, whenever I used to go for rounds, I used to tell them that. Of course, I was doing rounds and getting out. I mean, the nurses were doing 12-hour shifts, 6-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts. So I mean, you have to give it hats off to them. And then initially there was also a lot of fear in the sense that a lot of people did not want to come on also, and I don't blame them. There is nobody who's a coward. The reason being, ultimately, if fear takes you over, you will not perform. And if you not perform, it's a life and death situation. So it's better to stay away rather than to actually jeopardize your own health and at the same time jeopardizing the patient. So I think whoever did not want to do it is also fine. But ultimately, the fear was in, it was created also a lot. By created, I mean, see, COVID did not, it was a huge mental issue also. You're seeing patients who are just there. I'll give you an example that I also used to see in center, which was obviously Jaslok was taking care. So it was around 30, 40. These are stable patients. These are not patients. They have just been isolated because they can't be isolated at home. Home isolation was not a big thing at that time initially, purely because uh, there was not much of monitoring. Also, as we go view ahead, I think home isolation really improved, and we had a lot of monitoring, a lot of startups also got in. So during that time, it was these, the centers were actually around 40, 50 people, and they had they had this fear that when they are going to go back home, it was almost like it's, I mean, how many days I'm going to be isolated. So for example, of course, we had duties, weekly duties, where different doctors used to come. So the week I used to go, obviously it was almost as if we are the beacon of hope. Whenever we come, the questions start. They're like, so how many days? These are not, and these are stable patients comparatively. These are not patients who are, they are mild disease, they're not moderate to severe disease. And they used to have these questions. So when the fear was so much, I don't, you just keep me till any time, I don't want to give it to anybody at home. So since, if you want to do an RT-PCR, do it again. So those were the questions. So the fear was so high, and you're right. I mean, in any kind of, if anybody without the mask, you're like, oh, that's not good. And then if somebody is coughing, and it could be a single sneeze, so there was so much of fear. Oh my god! I mean, this is like,
And movies like Contagion, I think probably psyched us up even
yeah,
more.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So you take care of elderly patients, and during this time there were many elderly also who were admitted, who got the infection and needed care. How, was it different from taking care of the younger ones?
Yeah, first of all, I think it was a pandemic, so there was no age barrier. I was taking care of almost all age groups because pandemics have no rules. Let me be very frank, you have to be in the job. But yes, older people were just faced too much, according to me. Yes, I was happy that a lot of older people did not. There was mortality, but there was a lot of morbidity also. And the issue was, just imagine an older person who has just been cut off from maybe mild symptoms is fine. Mild symptoms, not even severe, moderate to severe. Moderate to severe, they'll be in a very bad condition. They'll be in the ICU. They won't know anything. So, but mild symptoms, they have been isolated, and at that time, obviously, and a lot of people did not want to keep home. Also, I don't blame the relatives. They were fearful. They were like, other people will get. But hospital was not the right place, so they had to go to centers. But they had so many comorbidities, so they can't go to centers, because centers, you did not have people with comorbidities, because centers were only good enough for people who were stable without a real lot of morbidities. And a lot of people did not get phones. I mean, if everybody knew that we were going to go to the hospital admitted and we had a phone in hand, they used to come later, but not at that time. So it was difficult. So they used to ask us, I mean, first of all, let us come back to that. I'm in a PP. I'm almost like an astronaut, trying to just tell them that, yeah, I have come. And the vocal resonance is beautiful inside the PP with the mask. So mask on top as well. So I don't think half of the, and there's a hearing problem as well there. So
Yes.
obviously I used to go more closer. Of course, the geriatric training helped me in that. So I used to go more closer, more softly, try to talk to them. And I used to make sure that I always had my name written front and back. No doubt about it, because they should know. Because it's very easy for them to go into delirium. I mean, they would have gone into delirium, isolated, not having a caregiver, asking again and again, if I am okay, why am I not being discharged? No, 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 you have to stay for those 10 days. No, but why? I mean, I'm okay. I don't have anything. My SpO2 is okay. As you are only saying I'm doing fine, then why are you not discharging me? And then at home, obviously, the discussion we are doing is they are trying to prepare the home, because it was all, nobody was prepared. I mean, you had to prepare the home, separate room, separate bathroom. And at home, after they go back, also, it was isolation. So it was not that easy. They also could not see. And a lot of them were dependent. So when they got dependent, it was very difficult for the older people. So I think the mental toll was a lot on older people already having a lot of physical, I mean, health issues. But I think the mental toll just made it very difficult. So in handling them, I think it was trying to talk to them daily, encouraging them. No, every day is going on. We are just, I am there. And we used to try to chat to them. The nurses used to do a good job. In spite of having a very tight schedule, they used to go and try to at least be there for them, try to chat with them. The biggest problem was there was no touch, real
Yes.
touch possible, which is very important with older people in general.
Correct.
So, I mean, even if we were touching, it was all in gloves and this, and also there is no real human touch which has been felt. But yeah, trying to still pat them, trying to talk to them, tell them what's exactly happening. And we have spoken to the relatives, make, and then the sisters, everybody used to do a good job. There were video calls. So try to at least for them to be in touch, because I think that was really, really sort of important. And I mean, there was no two ways of, I mean, it is the best time to learn that actually a social sort of network is very, very important. And that connect, that's why health is defined as physical, mental, and social well-being, and not only physical and mental well-being.
Right. Yeah. At first, I want to say thank you for doing what you do. I think so many people, so many patients, so many families have benefited by you being there and taking care of them. Um, how was the second wave? Was it more demanding? Did you at any point feel, oof, this is way too much for me to handle? And
Oh,
also the perception of people considering our doctors as God, because there was lack of resources. There was the pandemic was going haywire. People were dying everywhere. There was a new strain out there. How did you deal with all that?
I think the biggest thing about the second wave was, we used to be very frank. We saw it coming. We saw it coming from abroad, but we sort of didn't scale up enough. I don't want to go into all that, but ultimately we did get ready. We did get ready when we had to, and it was. I mean, the second wave was worse than the first in a lot of ways, because in spite of seeing that it was there, the first wave took us totally aback because we had no clue. But then the second wave was like, why the hell did it come? And the second wave is where people close to quarters also started getting involved. So I mean, my cousins were involved, and even my wife had got it. So there was sort of, and the numbers were just huge. I mean, so it was sort of overwhelming. And I think a lot of times the first wave also, I thought ki it's just getting too much. And the real irritation used to come, if you say, is when we already started vaccination, and we saw Who had been vaccinated? The vaccinated people were the health workers, and the older adults had just started. But the people who were moving around freely without masks were the younger people. So it was frustrating because ultimately it was like, what are you doing? If you don't have a sense of responsibility to your own health, you should have one to at least your near and dear ones. Because a lot of times it happened that my older people, the patients are telling me, I never went out of home, but there were people going out.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of irresponsible behavior. Fine, they were like, oh my god, we have been at home for so much, but it's only pulling along a bit more. Let the pandemic finish, pulling along a little bit more. So I think that was more than the wave, the fact that every time you as a health personnel always feel, could this have been prevented? Prevention is better than cure is always standing in medicine. So we always used to feel, could this have been prevented in what way? Let us not talk about facilities, let us talk about oxygen, because I believe in one thing: what is in your hand is what you can do.
Correct.
So in your hand, if as a doctor there is a patient, I will want to treat, but as a general, as a citizen, your responsibility was also there. People had responsibility that no, they do not show irresponsible behavior. So that is something which really sort of took me back a bit, just when the second wave sort of came in. And of course it was a tsunami. I mean, the number of home isolation cases itself I was seeing at one point was too much. And I was doing that at a phase in spite of my wife actually being affected with COVID, and she got a pretty bad COVID. So ultimately, although she was not admitted, but ultimately it affects you a lot. So you have to draw the line somewhere, saying that no, this is sort of enough, and we you need to make sure that people realize that. So apart from this, I mean, this is one part. I was also doing a lot of webinars, I was doing a lot of things for older people, trying to tell them what's happening. So in one of the corporate talks, I frankly told people, I think it's a lot of irresponsible behavior which shouldn't have happened. So that's why when this we are talking about this third wave which is impending, which might come, which might not come, we're just saying, let's hold our horses. Vaccination is another hand. Let's get people vaccinated, but follow the precautions. There is no immortality with vaccination. So try to
Correct.
follow the precautions. So I think that is something which really sort of is important.
Yeah, as you've practically answered my next question. I was going to ask about the message that you would like to give out to the people. So I hope you guys, everybody who's hearing, has heard it nice and clear. Follow COVID protocols. Our doctors, our healthcare professionals are humans too. And they also get frustrated. They also feel, oof, why can't we follow the rules that have been put in place? And like he very beautifully said, vaccination does not guarantee mortality. So get vaccinated, and along with that, please follow the protocols so that our healthcare professionals also get a break. Um, how did you cope up when your wife was going through COVID? Having
Ah,
your loved one there, back at home, in the off, back at work, and then back at home, and then constantly being surrounded by this. Was it
yeah,
tough?
yeah, it was tough, but at the same time, I would say I think she herself, at a point, she was saying, I mean, it's COVID is about numbers. So I, being at a private setup, I still knew that the numbers, the exposure was lesser. Her exposure was a lot. She was in a center which was she was more of a semi-government center in which she was seeing a lot. And my inspiration was sort of her only, because she was fighting. Although she sort of fought the disease, which, to be very frank, has long standing implications. A lot of fatigue, all those things are there. But ultimately so that was inspiring enough. But I always used to, I mean, I think she's been the biggest inspiration. But I was one quote which I would never forget, because for me the ultimate in any country is, I mean, is sort of the army. So I have my friends in the army. So my and I remember during the pandemic, one of my friends in the army said, I actually salute you. To get it from an army man, he was like, I was like, dude, but you have been doing this for age. I mean, he was posted in Kargil as well. So I was like, you have been doing this for years. But he was like, no, what you are doing now is, I think, is something which is, I mean, or what you, I won't say me, what you are doing as a whole, as the doctors and all the allied health professionals are doing now is huge. I mean, I wouldn't, and it takes a lot of guts. So I think that is something which really sort of uh, would be in my mind, that get it from an army man who knows that what is there to be thinking about. And I wouldn't equate what he feels, because I think that is completely different. But to get it from that was a huge sort of, you can say, an encouragement.
That's so sweet of you to say, and so emotional, because I come from a 4G background, and also I would say salute to our doctors and the healthcare professionals, because what you guys did by being there is actually being a shield saving the humanity. Your support structure. Did you have a support structure? Do you still have a support structure around you? Because the pandemic is, the virus is looming around, and one doesn't know when it may just go out of hand. When people are going on revenge vacations and I don't
Hmm.
know, all kind of things. So, is there a support structure in place for the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, to be very frank, it's us, each other. Then we obviously talk to all our cousins. I mean, what initially it was always, I mean, everybody was even getting used to Zoom. For example, in the first 1 year, I think we only had birthdays through Zoom, celebrations. And it was good that we were still doing, but it was not वो बोलते हैं ना, वो बात नहीं थी. It was not obviously that kind of a celebration, and nobody was in a mood, to be very frank. It was, people around are dying. Even if your own family is not affected, nobody's in that particular mood. So meeting them was very difficult. But yeah, I mean, we were sort of in touch continuously. And I think, most importantly, being there for each other was sort of, I think, the biggest support structure. And I think workplace also, I think people like Dr. Shruti, then even Dr. Indranil, Anand, Dr. Anand, Dr. Bindru, these are all people of critical care who were sort of involved in Jaslok. I mean, they have themselves done a lot of sacrifices. And the fact that I got to know them even more during this particular time and learn from their resilience. Was sort of, I mean, everybody, all the doctors, I think, made a lot of sacrifices. And it was sort of, if you see the support structure, ultimately you start believing after some time. Now, I think initially when it hits you, it's really sort of takes you aback. And when you realize that, yes, you had it in you. Initially you thought maybe you didn't have it in you. There are times that you feel that whether you should be doing this at all. But as you go ahead, and then you get patients telling you that, no, I mean, we were very happy that you took care of ourselves. Patients telling us on online later that, oh, finally I am seeing your face, because it was all PP and it was all the
Yeah.
noise. I didn't even know the volume of the noise, and the noise came out properly through the N95. So it was something which you don't know. So ultimately, what do we, as doctors, what do we want? We want the person who is an individual to get better. There were a lot of deaths, yes, and it's always a down. I mean, no doctor likes deaths at all.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I think doctors were pushed in such a corner in the pandemic that we had to leave that death alone and go to the next patient, because there was too many patients. There was, so we had to sort of keep continuing doing what we sort of doing. And I think people in the critical care and intensive is all that, I think, did a really really good job in sort of making sure that they were still doing what they did. And their work hours were much longer than me as well. And being around along with the COVID cloud, knowing that you're going to fight the virus every day, I don't think is sort of easy in any way.
Um, what would you like to say to the people who think our doctors are God?
I think we have a very good place of that belief that God exists. So let us keep it to that. And everybody has that belief. I don't think we should equate anybody, any human being or anybody, to God in general. But all I can say is, we are human beings. We have our limitations. In spite of having whatever we might have in our mind, we always try to declutter and come to work, because decisions are made, life and death is involved, and we try to do it on a daily basis. So, and we are humans, so we know we need to give this medicine, we need to do this, we need to do that, but the response from the patient side is still quite a bit of a mystery. Yes, we have had plenty of research and we know what's happening, but ultimately how the patient comes out, some patients do, some patients don't. So you also have to be patient in the sense that it's not, it's if somebody is not being, for example, if you're waiting for your appointment, it's not because the doctor does not want to see you, it's because he's treating somebody else. So it's not that so that's not happening. So I think you should be, because I don't blame the relatives a lot, but I think you have to be more patient as a relative. Yes, loss is a lot, so you obviously get very aggressive. I mean, all these talks of you getting a lot of aggression on the doctors doesn't work. It should not something which should happen at all. Uh, but what I mean to say is ultimately doctors are humans, and they also have emotions, they also have their lives, and if they are around to try to save yours, there is a lot of sacrifice going on behind as well. So you should realize that, and just treat us, just treat us like a normal human being. I think that should be enough. And obviously we will do our best. That's why I said there is no mantra to immortality, so we're still discovering it, I am thinking. But ultimately we would want to keep you in your best health, which could be anything depending upon what you are. For example, if it's in a cancer, person with a cancer, it's about whether there is no pain. We know death is inevitable. So I mean, it varies with every set of patients, and I think that is what, from your particular perspective as a layman, you should think. And yeah, I mean, you should keep praying for all your health, for our health in general, everybody, because there is somebody sort of above. But what drives you from within is maybe getting that motivation into sort of doing things. And I think maybe that is what sort of, because you don't plan a pandemic, let me be very frank, you can't.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You can't, nobody can.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure there have been people who have not gone there to their own homes. I know of people for days together, days, to save them, to make them safe, and to also be clear that I at least know that I'm not putting any harm to anybody else, so that I can be focused on the job. And then they have gone home after 9 months. So I mean, so that is also ultimate sacrifices that people do.
So in a statement, I would say to our listeners, they are humans who are out there saving us. So let's be grateful to them for all that they've done and all that they do. Um, what message would you like to give out to the people in just one line, a strong message to the people?
I think the biggest message I want to give is ultimately the biggest key to any successful life is health. And I think health, both physical and mental, are very important. The pandemic has taught us that mental health is very, very important. So try to take care of your health, and don't try to be swayed by the news or a lot of other items which keep coming on. Try to focus on yourself as a person and on your health, because I think health is the most important thing in going ahead. And if you trust, and try to have the trust on your doctor, because when you visit any doctor in any setting, whether it's an acute setting, whether it's a chronic setting, whether it's an ICU, that element of trust has to be there, that they are trying to put the best step forward in trying to treat you. And I think trust is sort of the key. But please take care of your health. I think there is enough prevention in store to actually at least delay disease, if not preventing it in entirety.
Well said. Thank you for saying that. And your opinion about our conversation, the series called Humanizing Our Healers, that the Caregiver Saathi, it's one of its kind of an initiative by us.
I think it's a very good initiative, purely because I wouldn't say that it is a platform wherein doctors can talk. Doctors obviously do talk in person. I think it's a very good place to highlight that what they actually also go through emotionally in decision making. And see, ultimately, let me be frank, we'll continue to do the same. It's not that we need that particular spotlight and we will start getting working maybe 200% more from tomorrow. No, but I think it's a good platform wherein the discussion obviously is there in the humane part, because the human being of a person should never be forgotten. The emotional part and the decision making part, and how a person can approach things. I mean, different people have sort of different ways of approaching. I mean, a lot of people have a very joking way of approaching things. What a lot of people have a very serious way of approaching things. A lot of people, I mean, so I think it varies. And what is important is it also tells us from other experiences. When you highlight that yeah, maybe the doctors were not wanting to tell open, at least they know that such things are there, and they,
Correct.
yes, I also have undergone that, and I sort of completely relate to what has sort of happened. So I think that in that way it's very nice, because ultimately it highlights those doctors also which might not want to do it in the open, but at least they realize no, there is a platform they can do so.
And for the viewers, what he said, um, just give it a thought. That dude, he was also scared. Well, I was scared too. And before we close the conversation, any anecdote that you would like to share with us, or some crazy memory, or some happy memory of the last year and a half?
uh, I would say ultimately I think I mean, the first sort of time when we actually went, and my wife actually went out, sort of eat, and sort maybe there is some sense of normalcy, although there was. So I think that was a good moment. And apart from that, yes, meeting near and dear after a long time. I mean, staying in the same city and not wanting to, telling them point blank that don't even attempt to even try to meet us, was not that easy. But yeah, I think that was there. And yes, in this, I mean, uh, just some constant discussions amongst the doctors, we stopped even seeing the numbers. It was like, yes, we are just going to handle it. And we, because there was no discussion, again, it was not in our hand. I think one of the real good things was that when I was doing a lot of sensitization session with a lot of elders, I think that also was in a way a pretty good part, because I realized that if older adults can learn technology and come online, which is very difficult. Let us, these are people who didn't want to be on technology at all. So hearing their sort of stories also and learning from them, like how they coped. So this was also happening sort of simultaneously. So I think it was all, I mean, it's been sort of an experience. I wouldn't say I would want to undergo a pandemic again. If I have a choice, yes, I might act medically in the same way, but I don't think anybody wants to undergo that, because it's just too much of death. I think it just made the perspective of death a bit too much. And I've heard abroad where people, doctors actually had to decide who to give the bed, and it
Yeah,
was not in their
absolutely.
hand. It was
The
not in their
triage.
hand because the triage is so difficult.
So difficult. So
So, and I can imagine, I mean, I was in platforms wherein we actually had heard experience, and there was a lot of guilt, but it was not even in their hands. It's not that they could
absolutely.
have saved everybody, but there was so
Absolutely.
much guilt. So
Yeah.
that's why, I mean, I think you should, the biggest thing I would say is ultimately to anybody, everybody I can say of this 18 months of the pandemic, you're still alive.
Yeah.
You
And
have
we still
overcome.
having this,
Yeah,
and we are
yeah,
having this
yeah. I think
conversation here with
so.
each other.
You have overcome that, and everybody has. Whoever is still there, that is why. Please be responsible. It's and let us hope that the pandemic gets allayed. And in general, remember, COVID is only highlighted. It's only one disease, but it has brought us to our knees completely. So let us. I think the biggest silver lining here should be, please try to take care of your health in a better way, not to take small moments lightly. I think in life, I think that is something which is sort of so very very important. And I mean, that's what makes life. I think ultimately you have to keep living on, try to face the obstacles in the best possible way. You can be weak, yes, but at some point you will gain strength to sort of overcome. I mean, ultimately it's to behave like a human being. I think nobody is superhuman or a superhero here. And just try to get handle of emotions, because see, fear, I think, is a real emotion, but at the same time confidence is also a real emotion, motivation is also a real emotion. Sometimes when you have certain people just doing it, you are like, if they can do it, you can do it. So I mean, so that is what, so draw inspiration from people around you, and I think that's how life sort of goes on.
Thank you so much for the conversation today. I think it's one of the most human conversations that I've had. Thank you for highlighting every human aspect that a healthcare worker goes through. It's been a privilege having you here and listening to your journey in the last year and a half. People must have connected to you, must have felt your emotions, and I'm sure each one is grateful for what you do. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute uh, pleasure to host you, and from the entire team of Caregiver Saathi, all the very best, and we look forward to a continuing association with you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
thanks a
much.
lot.